Boom, and according to that we are live. Sorry for the no setup and the tweet and everything coming a bit late tonight. Doing bits and pieces that way as usual. But very good to see you all, thank you for joining. Yeah, good to see you. I've been, in terms of Netflix, I mean what I've been doing this week I guess is including tonight, well I finished watching The Crown, which I never expected to be good, but I did see. When I was in Australia my mum was watching it and she said it was really good, but I'm kind of like, well, it's a show called The Crown and my mum recommends it, so I wasn't quite sure about that. But then I saw Victor recommending it and he was asking who's Prince Philip, and well that's easy, he's a racist, obnoxious embarrassment to the Commonwealth. But yeah, I must say the show was actually quite good, and I did watch all 2 seasons, and it was, yeah, it was good. I watched it on my commute on the train, and I just started watching Altered Carbon, and it's good. It's good. I mean, I'm continuing to watch it. I don't feel quite like it's the must-see TV type of thing. I kind of did feel with, you know, like Black Mirror or Electric Dreams or for example the Expanse. I thought was very good. It's not quite like that, but yes, Prince Philip is hilarious. Well, I agree, he is funny, but you know, you just sort of wonder. I must say, if you watch The Crown, it's quasi-centered on Prince Philip actually. It kind of gets the really good juicy bits at the end of season 2, so it's worth watching for that. Again, I've always been a little bit dismissive. I mean, it's not really important to my day-to-day existence to know about the royal family, even though they are technically the royal family of New Zealand, and their face used to be on every dollar note and coin in New Zealand. But yeah, I'm enjoying Altered Carbon. I do quite like the theme. The themes are getting a little bit repetitive, I must admit. This whole future of everything being, you know, AI and altered consciousness and whatnot, but I'm really enjoying it. Other news, other stuff that's going on. MyChan TV is back in development. Like I said, there was a bit of a scoping issue, which we had to sort of stop and rethink things, and then we had to get the resources to do the development work again. But that said, it is now moving. There will be progress. We are aiming for a I think end of the first week of March, I think around the March 9 beta now, so again 1 month away. Last time we were going to have some compressed resources and it was like 2 months away, but when I saw what the scoping, it was all off. So yes, not altered consciousness, altered carbon. But yes, I think the people who wrote these sort of things about different sorts of future virtual reality consciousness were probably all doing drugs when they wrote it. It would make sense. But yeah, hey, we got Nippon Culture Quest. Good to see you. I enjoy your videos, by the way. Everyone go and subscribe. We've got Mr. Cordy Chip, Hineric Weber. We've got Quint Rankin. Good to have you. And boom, indeed. What is Ty Lopez doing here? I don't know. Where is Ty Lopez? I don't know. But Robert Aldu, good to see you. Sergeant Bilko. And we got everybody. I'm sure people will keep coming in. Like again, I'm sorry I sent the invite so late, but it is what it is. I don't have a lot of subjects for tonight actually. I was just going through my tweets for this week. Hey Kit Crawford, good to see you, man. It's been a really busy week last week actually. I know I often say that. I do actually have my personal life which I don't talk about. I'll talk a little bits about my life once it becomes historical. But yeah, I don't share current life stuff, but it's busy. It's yeah, I know I always say no. I know I say I'm always busy, but now I'm really busy. But now I am really busy. Is what it is. I mean, that's why I come here. I come here to escape from my normal life. And yeah, lots of cool stuff going on. But it just means as well I've been a little bit quiet the last few days. I know. Well, more time for IKEA, so later maybe perhaps. Maybe that's in fact I've not been making tracks lately, although I've got all these tracks set up, so I guess that's good. I can do lots of improvised lives at the end of the show, which I quite enjoy. But I would quite like to actually sit down and plan out some tracks based on the loops I've set up. Hey Nippon Culture Quest, we were indeed talking about Altered Carbon. I am about 7 episodes in and I am enjoying it. Like I said, I'm not quite finding it as binge-worthy. I'm finding it interesting, but not quite as binge-worthy as, for example, The Expanse or whatever. But I am quite enjoying it. I think I did mention this. Star Trek Discovery, I really didn't like the first 6 episodes that they put up and they just left. I enjoyed the new episodes so far more, actually. Although my expectations were set so low at this point, I actually took it off my watch list. But I just watched some of the new episodes out of boredom. The writing isn't good. It's not good, but I find at least now the story is better. Hey, Tai Nakamura, good to see you, sir. Yeah, it's good to see everyone indeed. So yeah, let's get into the subjects that we have, and we'll see how we go. Yeah. It's funny as well, I often have my shower before bed and everything just before the show, and I find I like to let my mind wander when I'm in the shower. I don't do drugs in there. Well, it's absolutely the wrong place to do that sort of thing. But I find I sometimes get thoughts which I go quite deep with. I actually just had I came out of the shower thinking that's a really interesting thought, and it's not really connected to anything. It's connected to like this idea of education, and it's kind of like when you're thinking about at the moment, everyone's like preparing for the world that's coming, that's rushing up at us at the moment. I guess this is what shows like Altered Carbon make me think about. Automation. I think a key thing about automation, I'm going to share the thought because I don't have many subjects, and hell, it's interesting, and I'm watching, too much science fiction, so here goes. Everyone's talking about automation's coming, workforce is going to be, taken over by all these automated jobs. Important point, that is not new. Automation has been here since the Industrial Revolution, the late, 1700s, the 19th century. We've been dealing with, automation and industrialization in different waves. Of course, first you had machines, and then you had, improved machines, and you had improved processes with machines, and then you had computers, and then you had industrial robots. There have been little jumps that have gone and enhanced automation, and, there have been whole industries that have been wiped out, in little chunks over time. But when we talk about automation now, we're talking about how, probably at a greater speed, you're going to see it's going to be a two-edged sword. On the one hand, you're going to see a lot of jobs that require people now are going to be done by intelligent computers, and that's going to be, you're going to see a lot of jobs go. But at the same time, indeed, the 1790 spinning bitty, the loom factories were the first big real shock, because so much of the economy used to be based on textiles. And in a very similar way, the whole economy is going to get a shock very soon, from machine learning and artificial intelligence. But at the same time, it's going to be two-edged. You're going to be able to have, just like you can have 3 or 4 people running a loom factory and producing more than used to take like 100 sweatshop workers. You can have the same thing with a lot of jobs now, all happening at the same time, and it's going to be a massive. There seems to be police outside there. I don't think they're coming for me. So the whole society changing at once. I know I've brought this up a number of times because it's something I deal with day to day, and I find it really, really interesting. And for me, as an optimist, I think about, well, how is this going to make my life easier? How is this going to make me 100 times more productive of myself, and how would I take advantage of that? And both for making my life easier, and 2, for doing things I couldn't do now. Imagine that I had 100 me's that I could, do more stuff with, which is pretty cool. I did not know that Toyota started out in the loom industry. That's actually pretty interesting. Well, they started out from Fuji Heavy Industries, which was diversified. They're actually the same parent company as Subaru Motors has, which is why they often make the same cars. Yeah, I don't know the full history of that, so there we go, but it sounds quite plausible. But where the thought is coming to, and hey, Kikansha Thomas, good to have you along here, Thomas the Tank Engine. Time to get strong, 7-Eleven bento, relax, and have some Tokyo tonight. Indeed, that's what it is time for. So here is the thought, though. I think about automation a lot, but I was just thinking as well, a lot of people talk about how education hasn't changed. I mean, I guess one thing I maybe think about watching The Crown and so on, and I think I was reflecting on my old university magazine today, and I was reading that, and I was sort of thinking, it's actually kind of remarkable, for as much as the world has changed pretty much since schools started coming out and education became widespread at the start of the Industrial Revolution. Schools really haven't changed very much, and a lot of people say it's almost a default go-to when you talk about modern education, that you talk about how schools are just like a replication of a factory. They're kids being told to sit, listen, how to receive instructions, how to produce homework, and whatever, one-to-many, how to be precise, and they're not really thinking about the individual children, and it's basically a corrupted approach, you know, of basically trying to design factory workers that was appropriate for the 19th century and was really outdated even during the 20th century. And we really need to rethink the whole paradigm of schools for the 21st century, where that kind of, you know, hundreds of sweatshop laborers are needing to receive instructions from the foreman is going to be redundant. And you know what? I don't think that's right. I know the old, you know, brick in the wall, the Pink Floyd kind of idea that we are, you know, education is a form of thought control and mass control and whatever. I kind of get it. There's a lot of cynicism there, but there's a lot of elements of that analysis that don't add up. The first thing is the teachers. If you meet teachers, if you ever think about how education policy gets formulated, I don't think any teacher creates a teaching plan, any board of education or even ministry of education makes a plan thinking about creating, you know, textile factory workers. They're not. So then the question is, well, if that's the case, why are kids still 40 kids and one teacher writing on the blackboard and teaching geography and, you know, history and mathematics? Why are we still doing the same, essentially, you know, I mean, with variations, essentially the same education as in the 19th century? And the thought I was having in the shower was, well, frankly, maybe that's, I mean, again, everyone wants one teacher to one kid. You know, everyone wants that individual to be acknowledged and that kid to have the best education that's best for them. But at the same time, you know, the whole society is not teachers. You have a limited number of teachers. You want to educate as many kids as possible. And I think the model that we have, for all of its flaws, is the best one that we've come up with, you know, which isn't to say it's not at times even completely broken. But, you know, the point is that if you really want to revisit this, you know, you really would need to be able to do it in a way that would risk failing the education of a lot of kids, you know, taking radically different approaches. There are lots of schools that do this. But, you know, I'm just thinking, I mean, I think we've had modern education with like one teacher, 40 kids, you know, going through from like 6 years old to 18 years old for so long now, 2 or 3 centuries. I think it's probably starting to impact on our evolution and how we socialize and how we develop. And this is the thing, even if you think about, even if we made education completely specialized for the individual kids, the institution of school being in a school with other kids, about the whole social development aspect of that you could miss out on if it all became like too focused on one person. You know, the whole idea about learning how to do tasks, I mean, it is a part of every job. And also, I think it really does a real discredit to teachers, and to recognize that teachers, you know, do get to know their kids, and they do customize, they do provide support for the kids who need a push, you know, who need help catching up, and the kids who rush ahead. And, you know, as much as we'd like to say that, you know, I'd learned Latin for 5 years, that we should be changing the subjects, it's not really that, you know, the subjects people talk about who don't think very hard about education think that we should be teaching kids programming and, you know, modern skills for the modern economy. But I think school really teaches you as much about how to think and how to interact with one another as anything else. Hey Lara, good to see you. We've got everyone rolling in. I'm sorry for the late notice for the thing, for the show. So I don't know. I'm kind of very interested. What I think, again, as an optimist about machine learning and automation, everything that's coming, what I think is really, really cool. I don't think it's necessarily that you have to say that we've got to get rid of all the schools or have kids all homeschooled with, you know, computer robot teachers or anything. I think you'd actually lose a lot from that. I think what you're going to have is you're going to have more tools for those teachers, who I think is still going to be one teacher to 40 kids, because there's no magic formula for increasing the number of teachers. But you're going to be able to give kids a lot more specialized. Probably there'll be a lot more tools to recognize the ability of kids and give kids sort of customized education, but through one teacher. You know, you're going to be able to, I think they're going to have the resources and the ability to be able to basically enhance how good they are at teaching already. I mean, that's what I'm optimistic about. And the other thing is that, you know, there's a stereotype of Japanese schools being very industrial and so on. And I think even when I first started coming to Japan around 1990, that was probably pretty true, at least of the schools that I visited in Japan. But the schools that I see now, of the kids that I coach at rugby and the kids that I meet, the kids that I see coming out of university into jobs, and my son's school, they are as interactive or more interactive than the classes I was in New Zealand growing up. You know, the society changes. So I don't know. It's kind of like I'm really interested what people think about what education should be. It's always really easy to put down schools and the system that we have as being, you know, industrialized education. But I'm really interested, and I think, you know, and I think Japan doesn't get enough credit for actually. Japan has teachers. If you ever look at who teachers are in Japan, they are not people minded for creating factory workers. You know, most of the Japanese Communist Party is based on the teachers' unions. You know, they are the opposite of that. These are teachers that care very much about the socialization in terms of, figuring out how kids function in society. You know, even if the system itself is like that. So I don't really know where it's going to go, but when I look at all of these sort of science fiction things lately, it does make me think, well, you know, what about education? It's really interesting that we are still really going through a 200-year-old education sort of construct. But, you know, I'm kind of optimistic that I don't think we need to necessarily turn it on its head. It'll be interesting. I'm thinking of this partly, of course, because, you know, when I was watching The Crown, there was the episode involving the education of Prince Charles, which looked horrible. You know, and these other things as well. It was my thought in the show. I thought I'd share that because I've got some extra time. But yes, anyway, let's go into the stuff that I have. So first one is Tokyo. Tokyo, although the rest of Japan is rapidly now declining in population, Tokyo continues to be sucking up population from everywhere else. It is, you know, it's often been seen as a problem in Japan that everything is too Tokyo-centric. Companies set up here. People move here. Towns that are losing all the young people are coming to Tokyo. As someone who lives in Tokyo, I kind of think, well, it's because why would you want to live in a town that's dying, and why wouldn't you want to come to Tokyo if it's here? But, you know, there is still a perceived policy priority. It's partly because, of course, politicians in Japan are geographic. You know, they want their home constituencies to not be dying towns, right? So they do a lot to try to incentivize people, especially young people, to stay in rural areas. But that said, while the rest of Japan is losing population, becoming more elderly, and losing their young people, Tokyo, while it has a declining birth rate, is still gaining people just by immigration and by internal migration within Japan. 22nd year in a row, in spite of the fact that the rest of the population's crashing. I guess it's kind of bad for Japan, but at the same time, I think that this is kind of what makes Tokyo cool. I mean, you know, all the people who move to Tokyo, they're all people who are coming here for a reason. They want to do something that they can't get to do back home, and that's very motivating. That's what's motivating for me. And it's cool to be in a city that's built around that. And I think that's why Tokyo is and remains actually a very exciting place to be, even though people are concerned that, you know, it's going to have negative consequences for the rest of Japan. I also actually frankly think as well, from an environmental and a kind of humanity perspective, mega cities are probably a good thing. It sounds counterintuitive to have these big, overpopulated, you know, cramped, supposedly remote from nature cities. But I don't think the idea of having, you know, rural areas, you know, being cemented over, I think letting nature be nature and so on, and having people more concentrated is, again, in an evolutionary sense, I think it's a good thing, actually. You know, there's a lot of towns that I think you can, two options. Make it so that those, the government could invest in making those towns things that people from Tokyo could go out for, you know, for agricultural use, for recreational use, or whatever. But, you know, there are towns just full of people over 80 years old, and, you know, right now during winter, you know, how many deaths we hear about from old people trying to, you know, shovel the snow off roofs themselves, and they're 85 years old, and there are no young people in their towns to do it. To me, you know, I don't know, I think the government should be looking a little bit like Singapore. They should be looking at actually what can they do to actually, you know, concentrate those communities in Tokyo. This is my view. And, you know, figure out those towns, whether they close the towns or whether they modify the towns to sort of, you know, in a planned way to actually foster. Because naturally speaking, you know, land rights in Japan, property rights are very, very strong, and have been very, very strong for a long time. So people feel, you know, they don't give up their land. Even if they don't use it, they don't give it up very easily. And I think this is very socialist, this is very communist, but in a way, especially given the number of, you know, abandoned towns where the landowners won't give up the land, but they won't use it either. we're going to head to a time where, a lot of Japan's going to be abandoned, but no one's going to be able to do anything about it. And I think, the government's got to start thinking about, well, what about some overall planning, whether they actually have a certain degree of rights to nationalize, to confiscate land, with appropriate compensation to the owners. I think there's an opportunity actually in the aggregation in Tokyo, both for making Tokyo awesome and two, for actually, renovating the rest of Japan. But yeah, and in New Zealand, I mean, we do this sort of stuff all the time. When the council wants to widen a road or add a nature strip, they take people's land. They pay them compensation. It's easier in new countries to do this sort of thing. In Japan, when you want to widen a road, you have to pay a lot of compensation, which is why if you ever go to like if you ever see an area like a suburban area with a lot of very narrow roads, you'll notice that around the big roads there'll be a lot of very big houses beside the roads, and it's because the people who own the lands where they built those widened roads got so much compensation. But yeah, this is a big it's a really big policy issue for Japan, but at the same time I think this is also part of what makes Tokyo kind of cool to be in. So that was interesting. Now this, as you know, I'm an astronomy geek. This isn't to do with Japan, but this is just amazing to me. Wider roads, bigger cars. Not exactly bigger cars, bigger houses. You get bigger houses because they basically, wherever they want to build the road, they used to pay. I mean, it was almost actually as well like, land was a kind of a currency for holding savings in Japan. So, the whole idea that the big landowners would basically control the construction companies that would fund the politicians. So the politicians would build a road where they would pay 10 times the value of the land for widening the road, which would go to their contributor, which would go to the construction company, which would get kicked back to the politician. It was a kind of a corrupt cycle, a money politics cycle, but it involved land. So this was another reason that we had this. I know it looks like a failed pancake, but that is the disk of a star. And as an astronomy geek myself, I never actually thought certainly by this point in my life, that we would actually ever see the disk of a star. We see, if you get a telescope, you can see the difference between stars and planets is that planets, you can actually, even with the naked eye, like for Jupiter, for example, or Venus, they're so big that you could actually, they don't twinkle. Planets don't twinkle. When you look up in the sky and you see some bright stars, Sirius twinkles and Jupiter doesn't, and they're about the same brightness. And the reason that Jupiter doesn't twinkle is that it's actually so big that even with a pair of binoculars you can actually see, the bands on it and the four Jovian moons and everything. Stars are so far away that even when they're super big, they're so far away that they're never more than just an infinitely small point of light, even if it's really bright. And it's because they're just basically an infinitely small pinpoint of light that even like the distortions of the atmosphere, just breeze, humidity, anything will cause twinkling. And that's why stars twinkle and planets don't. Planets don't twinkle because they're actually big enough. Even to the naked eye, it stabilizes the light. So the idea that even with like the most enormous telescopes in the world, that we've actually been able to photograph the disk of a star anywhere, I mean, you've got no idea how crazy that is. And that we've actually taken a photo here of a supergiant. So this is a star which basically is as big as outside the orbit of Jupiter, and maybe even bigger than that. I mean, it's a red giant, but that's the idea. That's what our star is going to become like. And they can actually discern that, where we have sunspots at the moment, and they're smaller, and the theory was that when stars get cooler and bigger and they become supergiants, those sunspots will become very, very large, And this appears to confirm that. You can't see very much, but you can see there's distinct bright and dark patches on this very, very big star, and that seems to confirm the theory that they would have super big sunspots. It's not very sharp, but holy crap, I mean, that's a disc. That blew my mind when I saw that. I spent 6 months as a 15-year-old. I ground a 15 centimeter parabolic mirror to make a telescope. I hand-made a telescope 6 months. It took a long time. These are like, even with a 5-meter telescope, and this is with the infrared telescope apparently that they got this, but that is just freaking amazing. So anyway, I had to say that. What else we got here? Loading. What's this one? Mojiki. Oh yeah. So I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there was an oil spill. An oil tanker, Panamanian oil tanker, broke up here, just sort of in between China, Korea, and Okinawa. Basically, this happened. When did this happen? was it? Was it in January? I thought it was even earlier than that. But basically, this tanker. And by the way, these things always happen to Panamanian registered tankers. It's because that Panama is like a tax haven for shitty ships. You know, they've basically, if you register a ship in Japan or America or Europe, you know, they've got lots of seaworthiness inspections. There's kind of a warrant of fitness, like a warrant of fitness for your car. All the registrations, the safety requirements, or the equipment that you have to keep, all the, you know, the tracking and so on that's required is a lot of cost when you've got very large ships. And there are a couple of countries like Panama that basically base their economy the same way that the Cayman Islands bases their economy on accepting, you know, anyone who wants to bank there and not charging them anything. Panama does the same with ships. Basically, you need almost no safety equipment. There's no inspections. You just, you know, take your boat there once, sign a few forms, put the flag on the back. And half of the ships in the world, you know, the big carrier ships in the world are Panamanian. However, if you see a Panamanian flag on a ship, that means that you've got a large ship that has no interest in safety or construction standards. And a Panamanian flagged ship, which is apparently staffed by, was it Chinese people or Filipino? It doesn't say it's a Chinese. Well, wait a minute, it was in the Chinese bay. But in any case, this oil tanker has broken up in a storm there. And it contains some multiple 10 times more oil than the Exxon Valdez. I don't know if you guys remember that, like from the 90s in Alaska, but basically the largest oil spill in history from a tanker or something. The thing is that the oil's been in like exactly in between Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and China, but it's getting on the old Kuroshio there. It's heading towards Okinawa. And this has been, people have known this now, it's not going to make landfall probably for a couple of months. They're not expecting it till late February or March, but probably what you're about to see is the worst oil tanker spill in decades. You're going to see basically, and you can see there it's mostly going to be Kyushu and southern western Japan. It's going to be covered in oil from this oil tanker. It's crazy. Yeah, that's not good. I mean, as far up as Tokyo there, you can see on the edge there, that current is the black current, the Kuroshio. The water temperature around there, this is where you go surfing off Tokyo. You can sort of see the water's actually a bit warmer, but yeah, the impact that that's going to have on sushi and sashimi, the impact that it's going to have on beaches. All we can do is sit and wait, and everyone's waiting at the moment. Yeah, Quinn, well, that area has been claimed. Well, at the moment when there's a major ecological disaster, everyone's trying not to claim it, but that is indeed, I mean, that is the where the economic zones of China and Korea meet. And but right now no one's trying to take ownership of it. But hey, Taketoyo Toguchi has won Sunday's election for mayor of Nago City in Okinawa Prefecture. So Ko-san, remind me, is he kind of let them get on with the base relocation of Tenma, or is he sort of against it? I know that there's always two candidates down there. The thing with the Okinawan elections is that there are basically there's kind of a slight tension between allowing Tenma to move to basically a reef in northern Okinawa, to allow the land there to be returned to people, and the risk of helicopters crashing on people there in the town to be reduced. And there's people who don't want them to move, not because they want them to stay, but because they don't want there to be a relocation. They want the bases to be shut down and completely moved out of Okinawa. LDP supported, so that means that they're more in for get on with it, actually. That's interesting. So this is the thing from my perspective as well. The people who are anti-LDP and anti-central government, so they are for, yeah, so basically they're for allowing the Henoko relocation, which will allow the return of Tenma, which actually I think as well. Tenma, this old US base in the middle of Okinawa, they've had like helicopter crashes. There was a serious one where a helicopter crashed into a university in 1995 that killed some students. Marines from the base, it's actually a Marine base, You know, there were some serious murders and rapes of children and so on. There was a lot of stuff there, particularly in the 1990s, that led to the Americans agreeing to shut down the base and to return the land. That's all nationalized, confiscated from local farmers, and to remove the security and nuisance risk of the base. And the solution that the Japanese government and the Americans came up with was not withdrawing from Okinawa entirely, but relocating that marine base to basically an artificial, what do you call it, an artificial base built over a very nice reef in a national park in the north of Okinawa. For the people in Okinawa who want to get rid of all the American bases, they're like, no, that's not acceptable. You know, we're not going to agree to anything unless you agree to letting, you know, or to U.S. troop productions. But for the LDP, you know, they're saying, well, look, we don't want this base, FTEMA base there anymore, because we agree it's too much trouble to everybody and it's generating a lot of unpopularity for the Americans. Even the Americans agreed with that. That's why they offered to build this new base. But, you know, they want to move. And from my perspective, I'm a little bit conservative about this. Those Marines being there in Okinawa are the reason that Taiwan hasn't been invaded. They are the fallback for defending South Korea. Yeah, so they are his pro bases in Denmark, maybe Greenland, I don't know. And Wildfire 777 pro China is complex. China definitely probably likes to make as much trouble for US bases there as possible. And the point is that the risk of withdrawing those US troops from Okinawa is, it might be better for the Okinawans, but it's going to be bad for the Taiwanese most likely, because China keeps sort of pushing the envelope there with, you know, you could see China doing a serious military invasion of a 25 million person country. Not to mention the deterrent it also provides to North Korea, although maybe less of an impact there. But at the same time, I mean, it sucks for the Okinawan people, and it's a legacy of the end of World War II that still is carrying on there. So it's kind of tough. But that is interesting that the people in this town of Nago, which is basically the area where I understand FTEMA is, have voted not for the anti-base person who the current mayor has been. He's been anti. He wants the base shut down, but he doesn't want it to relocate within Okinawa. It sounds like the person who's won is actually pro-relocation, which to me, you know, I think is actually good. But of course, that's for Okinawan people to decide. Some good news if you're into rugby: the All Blacks are here. They are coming. And they will be playing both Japan, a test match against Japan, and they'll be playing a Bledisloe Cup match against Australia later this year. So I'm going to go and watch that, although Yokohama Stadium is horrible. The stadiums in Japan, they're all multi-purpose. They're like Olympic stadiums, so they've always got like a running track around the field, which means that, you know, you can't get any seat where you can see the players' faces. Which frankly, you know, isn't a great way to watch rugby, but it's a 75,000 person stadium, and it's New Zealand versus Australia, so of course I'm going to be there. Of course, Rugby World Cup in Japan next year, 2019. It's kind of a dress rehearsal for the Olympics. And New Zealand, it's the current world champions. They're the ones who are expected to, they're the favourites for the World Cup. And there's another story, I think I put in here somewhere, that yes, as part of the preparations, the New Zealand rugby coach is already in Japan, and among all the other preparations that they're doing, training to win the World Cup, they're also all taking Japanese lessons. He talks about how you know, they want to actually make sure they spend meaningful time training here and actually contributing to the development of rugby in New Zealand, in Japan, which is very, very cool. Of course, there's also a lot of New Zealand players who come to be professional rugby players in Japan. It's a good market for, there's a lot of New Zealanders here. So I imagine that'll be receptive to learning Japanese for those future purposes as well. But yeah, and that is Sonny Bill Williams, by the way. He's interesting. He's played. He's like a professional boxer, and he's played in he's represented New Zealand in 2 different sports. This week there was the blood moon, super moon, blue moon eclipse that happened. That I took a photo of with my GH3, and I put it on my iPhone. But it came out quite nice, I thought. So let me zoom in on that. It's a little bit fuzzy. I don't want to zoom in too much, maybe, but it's actually, I got a nice shot of it right there in the middle of the lunar eclipse. That's where the moon passed into Earth's shadow, and that was from Tokyo at 10:30 at night, and it was quite a good, you got a very good view of it here from here in Japan, and yeah, looked quite nice. A lunar eclipse, you don't get them very often. We had a great solar eclipse, you know, a couple of years ago now, so we've had a good run with these. But yes, so that was interesting. So here we go. How you should behave in Japan, and this is an interesting guideline of how kids are educated. And now where does this come from? Well, let's check the source of this, but there's basically, I think there was a school, it's not like these are Ministry of Education, but there are a bunch of guidelines. What is this from? Who recently received a parent's orientation package from the school her child will be attending. Now this could be private school rather than public, but yeah, we've got them in English translated, so let's do it that way since you can see it. Listen properly when people are speaking, good life advice. Greet others and respond to questions in a clear voice. Kids in Japan mumble. They mumble. New Zealand kids mumble, and I feel like Japanese kids are like that as well. At rugby, there are some kids that just can't open their mouths. Sit up properly in the chair. They're very big about having proper posture. Have a clear understanding what belongs to others does not belong to you. This is one of the things I like the most about Japan, actually. In New Zealand, you know, New Zealand is a safe country, but even in New Zealand, I think it's the same probably in most other countries, that, you know, if you left your wallet somewhere and you know, run back to go get it, you expect it to be gone, and people will say, well, you shouldn't have left your wallet there, and including the person who probably took it will say, well, this is the penalty for that person for getting that thing. I will steal their stuff. You know, moving house in New Zealand, I got burglarized. I had stuff. I had stuff. I was moving house. I put stuff on a trailer, and people took boxes off the trailer. You'd have a party. People would steal CDs. You would expect that. You would actually put a padlock on the rooms to stop people coming in and lock up all your valuable stuff. And that was common sense when I was at university. Japanese people, I've never met Japanese people that think like that. I mean, not to say that there aren't criminals in Japan, but there's certainly not criminal behavior on that level, other than bicycles and umbrellas, with those two exceptions that make no sense to me. The society here is very good at respecting property, so I like that. After taking off your shoes, arrange them neatly in the entryway. Very good. Make sure your clothing is clean and unwrinkled. That can be tough, but there we go. Make sure keep your desk and surroundings tidy and organized. Yep. Keep responsibility to go to bed early and wake up early on your own. That's tough for a lot of people, especially you go to bed early in Japan. That's kind of tough. Eat a proper breakfast. A lot of people don't do that. Always brush your teeth. That's pretty tough. And never tell lies. This is something actually Japanese do make a big deal of. There is a kind of moral education and so on that people will say this. That's a tough one. I guess this is partly what Japanese were probably reacting to on the tweet. Relationships with friends. The other criteria are don't leave people feeling left out. Love this one, and this is something I sort of believe in. It's part of being considerate of others, but I do quite like that idea of making sure you don't leave people out of stuff. If someone has a problem, help them. Yes, think of others. Do not badmouth your friends. Wow, this is also, again, not to say that they do this, but it's nice to see someone actually putting these out as things that, you know, they want people to mindfully do. Be able to get along and play and learn with anyone. Important. I mean, again, we all know about bullying and stuff in Japan. We know that this is not a perfect society for this, but I think these are great. Don't just play by yourself. Be friendly and playing together with everyone. I like to play by myself as a kid. So, yeah, play outside, get lots of exercise, relax in natural surroundings. If you make a mistake, earnestly apologize. Yeah, so again, this got a reaction because people thought, wow, they're asking this of kids, and most adults don't achieve this. But I do quite like the idea that even these ideals exist, actually. Tofuku did a list of the best learning resources from 2017 that they featured, and I think that it is a fantastic resource. Tofuku.com, if you want to learn Japanese, I think is the starting point. Koichi, he's got a very good system. And he's very good at pulling together. So you've got Japanese learning shows, the Japanese style originated Terrace House, which you can get on Netflix. That's interesting that they recommend that. I know some friends, American and Korean friends, who watch Terrace House. I've got it bookmarked. I haven't actually watched it. Go away. There we go. Final Fantasy. Okay. The best Japanese learning books: Legends of Localization, KLC graded reading sheets, and Unko kanji drills. My son does Unko kanji drills, by the way. Poop. Kanji drills. It's funny that they're recommending them, but yeah, it's what Japanese use, and they're very, very popular. So go get this sort of stuff. The best learning websites, well, other than themselves, I guess. Bunpro. Natsuyasumi Kodomo Kagaku Denwa Sodan. Okay, I don't know what that is about. And gel up next, advanced. So apparently that's a website. Oh, I see. So this is help for kids with their summer vacation projects. But okay, that's an actual NHK show. The best learning apps: Tango Risto, Lingo Deer, Tiny Cards. Mr. Korichep, yeah, the Unko drill. It's basically a drill for kanji learning phrases, where every phrase and every kanji is put in a contextual sentence that involves poop. Yeah, I was kind of disturbed when I saw it, but kids love it. The best Japanese learning games. Hey, check this out: Stardew Valley, Persona 5, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Best Japanese learning wildcards: The Ultimate Guide to The Only Lesson You Need, Illy, and Nikai Champ. So, very good bunch of resources there to check out. Tofugu.com. This is like the latest blog post, and yes, go and check that out. What else we got here? Esports. I think I've talked for a while now about how Japan doesn't have esports, and it's not because they don't have gamers. It's because they oh, that link is no longer working. Let's go over here. They don't have pro gamers because basically gaming is restricted under laws related to gambling in Japan. That's okay, we forgive. So yeah, there's actually a new association being put together for pro video gamers, and it's actually, I really like the games that it's going to be for. Winning, mostly for Japanese games. Winning 11, Tekken 7, Street Fighter Arcade Edition, Call of Duty, Pastora, and what's that one? Monster. I can't zoom on that. But here we go. Street Fighter 5, Tekken 7, Puzzle and Dragons, Monster Strike. The games that they'll be starting, at least with an e-games tournament for Japan. Mr. Korichev, no, they're definitely not just visual novels. I mean, you know, of course, Final Fantasy and so on, you know, amazing like that. But no, Japan, the old Tekken. I mean, I used to live in an apartment with gamers who would just spend all day just memorizing the combos for Street Fighter and Tekken. And yeah, they're serious with the soccer stuff as well. There's some serious people who are good at those games. So it's kind of good to see that that's happening. Tokyo, I got featured, I got mentioned in the Japan Times. I didn't actually notice this immediately, but yeah, sort of shows people reacting to the big snow. We had snow again this week, not as much, and in fact actually it was more sleety, rainy snow, so it actually ended up clearing up. But there we go. Tokyo marks the annual tradition. Today marks the annual tradition of the entire country rolling its eyes at Tokyo falling completely apart under 5 centimeters of snow. Featured on the Japan Times. I've been featured on the Japan Times before. There was a 2-page spread where they called me a nationalist. Oh, Japan Times. But yes, I'm very glad that they like my Twitter. And all it's apparently been forgotten and forgiven, which it has been on my end. So that is cool. Thank you, Japan Times. The YouTube blog, it's interesting now that they have destroyed monetization for the masses. They have the National Ipachinko League. That's not a bad idea, actually. They want you to do, here are the 5 priorities that YouTube wants you as a creator, I guess me. So let's see what we do with this. 5 priorities for creators in 2018. First, prioritizing transparency and communication. Well, there's an issue of pot calling kettle black, YouTube. How about you guys show us what you mean by that, by being more transparent and communicating better? But there we go. They want us to communicate more. We ask for creators to give feedback. Oh, see, so they want creators to talk to them. Who wrote this? This is from... Okay, so this is the head of the creator blog, but they want our creators to communicate more with them. So they're going to use a creator channel to engage with the creators in the community. Support your success. What do they mean by that? I see. So they want people to use Super Chat and so on, and use the features there to be able to So we understand the frustration when one of your videos is demonetized or age gated and the impact it has on your views and your revenue. Well, we've worked hard this year to provide yada yada yada. At the same time, we're giving you more ways to give you revenue beyond advertising, including Super Chat. They also acquired FameBit, which I didn't know about, and various other sort of means, including where they're testing new ways so to allow merchandising and ticketing sales. So I don't know, you could probably get t-shirts of me or something. So they're looking to find ways to get you money that aren't just based on monetization. I'm guessing you'll have to be a partner for those sort of features, but who knows. Giving people more ways to engage with video. So community tab, reels. This is a great way, I think, to interact with people. So there we go. Hey, there's Phoenix 787. Tightening and enforcing our policies. Okay, so they are going to be tighter on enforcing, I guess, the policies that they have, and investing more in learning and education. This is weird though. Are they saying this for themselves or for us? Well, in any case, this is what YouTube, 5 priorities for creators in 2018. So I guess so there we go. It's our top priorities for you. They're sharing their priorities with us. I get it now. I misread that whole thing. So this is actually what YouTube wants to do this year. They want to be more transparent and communicate more with us. They want to support our success by giving us more ways to make money than just AdSense. They want to give more ways for people to engage with video. For example, the community tab. They plan to tighten enforcement of their policies. And they want to invest more in education so that YouTubers can learn how to properly take advantage of everything that they offer, which is all good stuff actually. So we'll see how much that comes through. The government's investing on, because of the issue with the people shortage in the delivery industry, particularly for companies like Yamato and Sagawa, they are investing in sponsoring the development of the spread of lockers for delivery, to drop off delivery parcels and so on at home, so that they reach 15% of buildings, or all 15%. They want people to be able to basically avoid redelivery, which is what takes so much time for the understaffed delivery companies. So there you go. What happens to unsold manga? Apparently it becomes toilet paper. If you have an Echo, you can apparently get your YouTube stats with it now if you get the right skill for that, so that is interesting. This was kind of cool. What you should always carry in Japan. This was Lifehacker, and I was kind of thinking, well, what do they know about Japan? But this was actually quite a good list. Handkerchief. See, handkerchief. I mean, what? Don't blow your nose with a handkerchief in public. It's disgusting. Culturally, it doesn't work here at all. But they're not talking about that. It's the fact that yes, when you go to a bathroom or whatever and you wash your hands, there are often not paper towels or whatever, and you do need your own like mini towel to dry your hands with. Taking a kid out all the time, I would say a handkerchief. I always take a mini towel out. You can get mini towels like from any kiosk at a train station, any convenience store. They're like $1. And you should probably have a towel with you, so that's probably a good one. Cash, you'll need cash. You won't be able to use your card everywhere. A lot of places still require cash. It's safe, so don't worry, that's a good call. Coin purse, yes indeed, if you're using cash you will have coins, so a good idea to have a coin purse, I agree with that. A plastic bag, also actually a very good idea, and I carry one, and this isn't actually advice I consciously give to people, but I do this. There are no rubbish bins in Tokyo, and you can't litter, so yes, you often have to put it in a bag and carry it with you until you find a rubbish bin. And I do that, that's right. I mean, so definitely have a plastic bag. Get a Passmo or Suica card, again, because a lot of places now take that, and it's better than cash and having lots of coins. It's very convenient. Probably not good for a short trip. It's maybe not worth the investment, but if you're here for like more than a month, I would say it's definitely get a Passmo Suica card. Smartphone should be no-brainer, but yes, apparently it's very good, and pocket Wi-Fi as well. The internet is very good here, and a battery pack full of that. Pocket phrasebook, because you should try to speak a bit of the language. Well, that's very nice of them. And passport, because you can save money on purchases above $50. This is a good list. I don't know. This is actually pretty what I am into. Everyone's congratulating Phoenix. What are they congratulating Phoenix for? He qualifies for Opal benefits. You're going to become an Australian Opal miner? What does that mean? I don't understand this. You got an odd email from YT just now, from YouTube just now. Oh, so what are Opal benefits? Phoenix share. Details. this is another case to me of just America just not understanding basic shit. Yes, I know it's something that you got from YouTube earlier. You said that I'm asking you, do you understand what it means? You don't understand what it means. They just gave you Opal privileges. You have Opal cards. Yeah, I think I... Okay, I guess I have to have a look at your Twitter, I guess, or Google it. But anyway, this is not to do with Japan, but this just baffles me. Kentucky City wants to send surveillance drones into neighborhoods after shootings. They want to have drones always flying, which will react to the sound of gunfire and go and find out what's going on. Basically, the drones would respond to gunshots detected through their shot spotter system, which apparently already exists, which has acoustic devices around the city to pinpoint where gunfire is coming from. Why do you even need that shit? I mean, seriously, you know, before you invest in putting microphones in drones, watching the entire city to sort of, you know, detect when people are shooting guns and go and see what's going on, why not just regulate your freaking guns? I mean, seriously. It's like these teachers being forced to do like active shooter training now in VR because, you know, this is apparently a normal enough problem in schools that people will bring guns and start shooting up schools, that teachers have to do training for it. If there's anyone in America watching, just understand that is not normal. I mean, that is not normal, and there are easier ways to fix it for much less money than setting up a bunch of drones to watch you all the time and to react to gunfire. Just a thought. Interesting, there's been a the Ministry of Health, Labour and Welfare is putting out new guidelines that hotels will be prohibited from banning gay people from staying. I think there are a lot of love hotels that would put this up as rules, or that would just conventionally deny gay people being able to stay in some regular hotels and some love hotels. But you know, I don't think Japan really has an overt like prejudice in the same way as in the West. It's not like you have this idea of it being Christian sin associated, but there are hotels that do discriminate, certainly, and they won't allow gay couples to stay, and the Ministry of Health, Labour and Welfare is actually going to put out guidelines that they will be prohibited from doing that, again probably with a view to the Olympics coming up and not wanting the country to be embarrassed by you know, by dodgy hotel operators, so that is good. Be warned, 5 Chinese nationals have been arrested in Japan for translating manga and games for distribution. Apparently some, well, beyond hobby, because they were actually making money from this, but basically some fan subbers, some fan translators of Japanese manga for sale and distribution in China, who are based in different parts of Japan, have been arrested by the police for translation. Translation can be a crime. I find that kind of disturbing, but there again, it is a violation of the rights of the copyright owners of the materials. But there again, you know, create appropriate, get your stuff translated yourself so that people don't have to do fan subs. Make it available in Chinese. I mean, that's the easiest way to kill that. Don't just you know, stomp all over fan subbers, if you ask me. Radri, who we did a 2.5 Voyages with last night, should have mentioned that earlier, went off the rails a bit at the end, which I'm sorry for, but it was actually quite a good, it was good to see Radri. Radri's a very, very good video maker, actually, and he's now making regular content, and I think he wants to get up to the threshold to go and subscribe to Tokyo Bananas or Radri. And he made actually a good video the other day explaining Setsubun, which actually more information than I knew. Setsubun was yesterday. It's a festival where where children will have little beans and they'll throw them at ogres, to basically oni, to chase them out. It is an exorcism sort of ceremony that you do once a year. Parents dress up as super scary ogres and make the kids cry, and the kids have to basically drive them out with magic beans. That's pretty good. But Radri's got an excellent channel, so please make sure. I did not get hit with any beans, no. Although there were some close calls. Fortunately, I have lightning reflexes, so it didn't happen. But yeah. well worth checking out the video, and well worth checking out Brady's channel. Please go and subscribe and watch his videos. I help him get over that subscriber hump, because yeah, he's someone who I genuinely think is deserving. He makes really good content, and he's actually making an effort now. He's going back to making regular content. He was always one of these guys who makes good content and doesn't put a lot out as a result of wanting to, you know, his quality standards are a bit too high. But I think he's kind of, he is interested in putting out more regular content, which I think makes him worthwhile to follow, because he does good stuff, and he's got a good sense for video. That's all my topics for today. That's the hour. How are you guys all doing? I'm gonna play some music, because that is what I do. Boom, let's do an outro. Let's pick a new track, and hope you guys have a good week. It's been cold here. I hope it gets warm soon. I hope you're all well wherever you are in the world. I am built like Chuck Norris. That's right, the beans. That's pretty much what beans do with me. They just bounce off. That's completely factual. Formula. Okay, this will be drum and bass. So before I enable the sound, let's just. That's pretty cool. Okay. Okay, so let's do it. We're going to do an outro, some drum and bass music, and enjoy. Thanks for joining me. See you again next week, and peace. Boom. That's not looping correctly. Let me try this again. Restart. Here we go. Ready, 3, 2, 1, boom. Drum and bass. I call it Formula. I bet it sounds like a racing game. glad you like it. And that's the show. I do mean to make these into tracks. I will upload this. I'm glad that you liked it. I think I called that Formula because I think it does sound like a racing game. That's the intention. Have a good night, everybody. Have a good week. Thank you for joining me, and see you next week. And peace. Boom.